This morning on Carolina This Week, we're going to talk with Solicitor Jimmy Richardson and also Benny Swans about what's happening in Baltimore, what's happening here, and an appreciation dinner for law enforcement that you might want to go to. Plus, we're going to hear about the state of the economy from an economist at CCU. Carolina This Week starts right now.
This is Carolina This Week. Carolina This Week with Tim McGinnis.
Good morning. Welcome to Carolina This Week. We have a lot to cover this week. I want to talk about what's happening in Baltimore, what's going to be happening here in a couple of weeks with Solicitor Jimmy Richardson and Benny Swans. We caught up with Benny Swans earlier this week along with Lou Krieger, two men with vested interest in what's happening in Baltimore.
It kind of hit me right in the stomach.
That's the same feeling Lou Krieger had in 1968, the last time riots broke out in Baltimore. At that time, Krieger was overseas, fighting in the Vietnam War.
You know, what am I doing? I'm 18 years old and I'm over here and they're rioting in my own neighborhood. I've got to worry about, my family back home being hurt or being killed.
Krieger grew up in Baltimore. He also worked as a radio personality for a morning program where he watched the city evolve. He says the riots are the result of a deeper problem.
The situation with the hard times always comes into play when something, like this happens, and, that's one of the things that the government's got to take hold.
Benny Swans agrees with that.
I think that we are suffering from the unfinished business of 1968.
In 1985, Swans led the Crisis Intervention Network in Philadelphia, a city-sponsored group that helped ease tensions in neighborhoods after civil unrest erupted between police and a black liberation group called MOVE.
But I used basic instincts and organizing tactics, and we identified young men throughout that neighborhood, and they became our community patrol.
On Wednesday, Krieger and Swans, also a Vietnam veteran, were brought together in the wake of the Baltimore riots. Two strangers who found out they have a lot in common, and that includes improving our neighborhoods.
Let's develop the formula that lends itself to them developing good relationship with community leaders in the absence of a crisis.
All right, and I am lucky to have Benny Swans and Horry County, Georgetown County Solicitor Jimmy Richardson, 15th Circuit to be exact. Thanks for being with me this morning, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Tim.
Obviously, what's happened has caught the eye of not just everybody in Horry County, but the eyes of the nation, really, what's happening in Baltimore. But beyond that, what happened in Ferguson, what happened in North Charleston, just in our own backyard here. First off, Solicitor Richardson, what do you make as a solicitor when you sit back and you watch the footage that we've all seen coming out of Baltimore, coming out of Ferguson, coming out of even, I guess last night we had them in New York, protests in right. Cities all over the country.
Washington.
What do you make of that? Could something like that, do you see something like that happening here?
I think it could, but we are a very different town than Baltimore or New York. This is a group that our citizens still believe in the police. They still believe that the police are out riding the roads at night while we're at home asleep, and we're happy for that. We have always had a really good relationship between police and the civilian in Horry and Georgetown counties, and that's a blessing. So we're a little different in that way. Now, what you could have is because Myrtle Beach is a tourist town, and that a lot of the tourists or the people that come in from time to time aren't originally from here and maybe don't share those values. So they bring the values with them of wherever they come from. And maybe their relationship with police aren't the same.
Well, you bring that up. We've got an event that's going to bring in a lot of visitors at the end of the month with Atlantic Beach Bike Fest and Memorial Day weekend. Benny Swans, what do you think? What do you think this May is going to be like? I think that's a big question mark. Everybody, what's going to happen?
Nobody knows what's going to actually happen at the end of the day, but as long as we take precautions, as long as we do all of the things that we can and should do, as long as we work together, and as we recognize that law enforcement and community involvement are absolutely key and critical towards preventing crime. We have to depend upon police every waking moment. Whether that's a domestic abuse situation, whether that's vandalism, whatever, loitering, we have to call on police. We need to be able to call on our police, trust our police, and we need to ensure that there's a quality relationship between our law enforcement community and the community. I think we can do that. I think we've got something special here in Horry County. And I think we have something that we can share with others on how to do crime prevention through working together. I also believe firmly that if we cooperate, cooperation, collaboration, and communication, those 3 C's, we do those things, I think we're going to be all right.
You were able to stem what could have been an historic riot in Philadelphia, or at least you get credit with having stemmed that. Worst case scenario, Memorial Day weekend comes and something happens and crowds start to gather, animosity builds. How do you diffuse that situation? I want to know this from our top law enforcement officer, and I also want to know this from our from Benny Swans, who's been through it.
Let me just share one part. I was very impressed last night with the preachers and the opinion leaders and the 300 men working side by side with law enforcement. And they created a barrier between those protesters and the law enforcement officers. They provided a wall of protection. That's the role of community, to work with police. At the same time, we should never overlook the fact that there has to be police accountability. I don't think there's a contradiction in quality policing and saluting police for what they do and expecting quality community policing at the end of the day. Those are the things we've got to work on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that there is nothing that you can do the day before Memorial Day weekend. But Myrtle Beach Police, along with Horry County and the Sheriff's Office, have been working toward this since last year. They promised changes. There's going to be changes. But that entails not only the police, because police and National Guard, all of that's great. And I'm not saying National Guard will be here. But what I am saying is that for parents that are sending kids down here for Memorial Day weekend or allowing their kids to go, there really needs to be a hard talk at home too, because police have got a job to do. They're going to be accountable for it. They have welcomed the cameras. Now it's just to figure out how to pay for them all, but they've welcomed all of that. And I think for the most part, they're doing as good a job as they can do. So it's going to be much more than just coming in the day before Memorial Day weekend and trying to put together a plan. That plan has been set in action, and now it's just to wait, and hopefully everybody will come in and behave, have a good time, but there's nothing to protest here. You know, they are doing a good job in and around Horry and Georgetown counties. So that's a little bit different from what's going on in other areas.
Well, and I want to talk about the event that you are working on that's going to happen in early June to honor law enforcement in our area. We're going to do that after we take a quick break.
Okay.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Carolina This Week. I have Benny Swans and 15th Circuit Solicitor Jimmy Richardson with me. We're talking about law enforcement appreciation, something that we probably do a decent job of in Horry and Georgetown counties when you compare it to what's happening in Baltimore right now and some of the distrust that other communities are dealing with between the community and the law enforcement. You might have some people coming in here over Memorial Day weekend at Atlantic Beach Bike Fest who don't share the same values maybe that we have here, that may not respect law enforcement and may not appreciate our men and women. How do you prepare for that?
Well, as strange as this may be, we're all in it together. That's right. Horry and Georgetown County citizens, if you're down there and you see something going amiss, don't wait for law enforcement to do it. Try to stop that. Try to quell that before it starts, because there are a lot of people that are coming in from, especially the Northeast, and that's where a lot of the problems have been. I love what Benny said earlier. Mothers and fathers need to get in touch with them before they go off. Even if your child is 25 or 30, you still their mom and dad. Talk with them about responsibilities, because you add a little alcohol and a good time together and things get out of hand. This law enforcement dinner will come after Memorial Day weekend, but the real purpose of it is you can't really get mad. I might disagree with Tim or Benny, but I love Benny and I love Tim, and I'm not going to hold that against them. I'm gonna look to good things that they've done in the past and try to give them the benefit of the doubt. And what we're seeking to do with this law enforcement dinner is bring everybody together and allow citizens to meet the people that they...
Well, quickly, let's talk about this law enforcement dinner. It's going to happen on June 11th. It's going to be at the Pine Lakes Country Club. There's an email address. If you want to send Benny an email.
swansbenny1@aol.com. We need your help. We need your support. We need you to be involved in building the kind of relationship that sustains quality communications between our law enforcement community and our citizens.
So come out.
Come out,
have dinner with a with a cop.
And we've got these huge plaques, bronze plaques that we're presenting to each of the 22 police departments along the Grand Strand. Come out, let's be a part of change.
How much is it going to be to go?
$25.
Okay.
You couldn't go out to eat for that. $25 tickets.
I don't remember the last time I did.
And they can feel free to donate, because the goal is to make sure that the officers and their wives attend from each of the police districts to come and be involved in it. Let's have a good time. Let's folks communicate and learn to know each other.
Benny Swans, Jimmy Richardson, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me this morning.
Thank you, Tim.
All right.
Thank you, Benny.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina This Week. We are on the road once again. We're at Coastal Carolina University this week. That's the Wall Business Building behind me. And we're going to talk business with Rob Salvino, an economist with CCU. All right, Rob Salvino, economist here at CCU. We talked with you earlier in the week about these golf courses that are being bought up by these Chinese investors. What does this mean? Does this mean that are the Chinese invading Myrtle Beach?
Well, I don't think they're invading, but it shows that, as we've been talking about for at least the last 2 or 3 years, with the population growth in particular of the Myrtle Beach metropolitan area, firms, both national and international, are recognizing opportunities here because it's showing up on searches where it didn't before. So that's one aspect of it. But then there are more issues as far as the type of product that they are acquiring. It is golf courses, so you can look at that in several ways. One, very large pieces of real estate, so a great asset to have and to hold long term. Two, since it's golf courses, and if you could look at industry trends with the golf business, not since we just came out of a recession, and even a little bit longer term trend, not quite certain how great the golf business is in the future. So that's a good buying time for someone looking to acquire a golf course. And then there's another whole other issue there with the EB-5 visa program. With not sure how much people are really familiar with that, but the investment community is beginning to become very familiar with it, because it's a source of capital in a time when, after the housing crisis and the mortgage markets, finding capital became difficult, much more difficult than before the crisis. This EB-5 program it's been around for a long time, but it wasn't as heavily utilized as we see now. It is a way to get capital when the banks might be a little more reluctant to lend.
So banks here domestically might have been, we're not lending right now because of what the economy's doing. But that opened up the door for.
Right. So this opportunity, this option has always been there, but there was not really as much need to go to it, and it's complex, right? For one, you're dealing with Chinese investors, and so now they're seeking these opportunities more so than in the past for various reasons. But when the kind of, I guess, the bank lines of credit started to dry up a little bit several years ago, entrepreneurs here became very, I guess, opportunistic, looking for other solutions, and so land, such as golf courses, these types of things, you know, as different owners have kind of marketed their goods to a broader market all the way to China, the Chinese have taken note, and investment word has traveled, and they're looking all over. And the EB-5 program, if you look at data on the volume of EB-5 activity, it has literally skyrocketed since the recession.
Do you think we're going to see more of it? Because, you know, if you think about it, and if you're a golfer or even just somebody who's lived in Myrtle Beach for a long time, you know these courses. These aren't small courses that aren't played very often.
Right.
Pine Lakes,
Sure.
Grand Dunes, Wild Wing, courses like that.
TPC, sure, yeah. And so there's a mix of the courses in there. There are some of our best courses are in this mix, and then some that are maybe not doing quite as well. It's 20-some courses, 22 courses. So you're going to have a mix of. We've got all kinds of courses in the Grand Strand. Everybody knows we have great courses, and then we have other courses that are more affordable for different interests. So there is a mix there, and some of that is just because of ownership. Some ownership groups have different types of courses, different levels, but some of it is, again, just when you're talking about an investor that has a long-term horizon coming in with cash, the ability for an owner to say maybe it's time to sell out, and it could be a good course even that does that. We don't know.
What does it say about the long-term the long-term prognosis for these courses, where we've seen a lot shut down here in Horry County?
Yeah.
Is this a good thing that a group of Chinese investors or a group of investors, period, have bought these courses, meaning that they might stick around a while, or is it just saying, hey, they bought it, they're going to keep it in their portfolio for a little while, they're not really interested in golf, they're interested in the bottom line, they're going to sell these courses or turn them into something else down the road?
Yeah, well, it really depends on, I think, the individual course. So given that they've taken these very different types of courses, I think they will look at it and say, what is the best use for this particular piece of property? So you have this course, you have an ABC course, and you look at that A course and look at what else kind of goes with it. If it seems like it makes more sense for that to stay a golf course and continue in that business, they'll probably make that decision. And if it seems like it'd have a much better use, then it would probably go that direction.
Let's talk about another story. We actually had you on ABC 15 News for last week, which is the unemployment rate. Mm-hmm. Unemployment rate up in South Carolina in general, but in our area ticking down a bit. Can we attribute this all to tourism, or is this indicative of some type of economic rebound?
Yeah, well, given the time of year that it is, so those are the March numbers, we always see a downturn in the unemployment rate from February to March, and that is seasonal. We have leisure and hospitality industry really ramps up that time of year. So we're seeing a lot of that, but what we really try to do is compare that with last year. We want to look at year-over-year growth in the same industry and overall, and the employment level is substantially greater this March compared to last year's March. The unemployment rate actually this year compared to last year, that same month, is a little bit higher this year. And one factor there is the labor force is much larger. So you do have, prospects seem to be brighter. And we have different people on our boards, various boards here, that have met this week. The semester's wrapping up. We have a lot of annual meetings, and they're from different industries, particularly leisure and hospitality. And many of them are saying that they are seeing double-digit growth this year over last year in their business, and so opportunities for hiring. The prospects are good, and so when job seekers see that, they enter back into the labor force, and until they do find a job, they are technically unemployed. So we actually see a higher unemployment rate this year than last year at the same time, but it seems like it's because more people are looking for work because the prospects are better.
Does that mean in our area in particular, are consumers spending more around here?
Well, the retail sales numbers are up over 5% year over year. Hospitality fees are up a similar percentage, very good. Most of the indicators that we track, if not all of them actually, are showing significant improvement over the previous year. Building permits, sales volume is at an all-time high for new and existing homes. So everything that we track is showing that our economy is more robust than the previous year.
How much do you think gas prices are playing a factor in that? Because we always talk about our area being a drive-to destination.
Right.
And with gas prices right now hovering around $2.30, having been down around $2, does that play a factor?
We should be able to see that more maybe through as the year plays out. Certainly the price effect. What we do know as far as having ever analyzed it specifically, and our Britton Center, Taylor DeMont has done some research on that, and he has seen little effect in the very short term, but over the long term, it seems to have a bigger effect, and it would be the expected outcome, lower prices, more spending on other things, and we should benefit from that. Yes.
Overall, as a country right now, it seems like the stock markets are doing fine. My 401k is certainly looking a lot better this year than it did, say, back in 2009, 2010.
Sure, yes.
Do you think, as an economist, how do you see things playing out? Since there are a lot of people who are living on fixed incomes or who don't have an income from a job anymore, who may be watching this, who are retired, what's your advice to the average investor out there, the average retiree who's living off the markets?
Right. Well, the markets, of course, it is risky to live off the markets, that's for sure, right? And for a retiree in particular, I think the challenge that they have had is, it used to be you would live off of fixed income securities, bonds and interest-bearing assets, but interest rates are so very low that there's just not much income coming from those. And so I would say the risk going forward is that a typical retiree is tending to depend more on the income from the appreciation of assets, and those, we've had a great run, but I still would say the typical financial advisor or planner would be recommending a conservative use of income and trying to preserve that capital for the event that there is a downturn. And hopefully any downturn in the stock market would not be like we saw in 2009, but it's always a risk, and we've had a pretty good run.
And you touched on interest rates, and on the flip side of that, not the retirees, but maybe the younger people, some people in our newsroom, even younger people in our newsroom, a couple years out of college, are buying houses again. Mm-hmm. Do you see, and interest rates are obviously playing a big factor in that because they're so low. Is it coming time where the Fed might start ratcheting those up a little bit?
Well, it just, I think it was yesterday, there was a report, national home sales, and so the markets moved a little bit, thinking that might cause them in June to increase the interest rate for the first time in, I believe it's 6 years. But they look at a lot of other factors as well. And so I kind of joke when I go out and do these talks around town now, I don't predict interest rate movements because they have moved it back every time. And I think any economist would have thought by now that they probably would have moved up a little bit, but it just hasn't happened yet. And really, that's because it is still kind of uncertain. We still have quite a bit of a hangover from the housing crisis. There are still many people who are still underwater in their homes, and there's still the shadow market of inventory of homes that will be released as foreclosures. And so those things, it just makes it's so uncertain for the Federal Reserve. They feel like every time they even hint at a movement, there's a little bit of a jerk back in the other direction. So it's hard to say when they actually will move.
Last question for you. I want you to keep it short. As an economist, are you optimistic or pessimistic right now?
I would have to say I'm optimistic. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good news to end on, Rob.
That's very good.
All right, Rob
I don't think
Salvino.
I've ever said that.
Rob Salvino at CCU, thanks for talking with me. We'll be right back with more Carolina This Week. That's all for Carolina This Week. See you back here next Sunday morning at 11 a.m.